I'd like to welcome everyone to the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., where the men and women of our government are busy daily ensuring the human and civil rights of each of us are protected. Yesterday and today, dozens from our delegation at the Muslims of America came to Washington, D.C. and asked members of the United States Foreign Relations Committee to turn their attention to human rights violations occurring in occupied Kashmir. These delegates are committed and will not stop until the matter is properly addressed. And with that, I'd like to introduce for the welcome, Syed Sultan Shah Gilani.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the Muslims of America Incorporated and our esteemed Vice Chancellor, Sheikh Syed Mubarak Ali Shah Gilani, it is my pleasure to welcome viewers from all over the world, respected press and like-minded advocates. My name is Syed Sultan Muhammad Ahmad Shah Gilani. I begin with the saying of the Holy Last Messenger, peace be upon him. Beware of the supplicants of the oppressed, even if he is an unbeliever, for there is no barrier between it and Allah. This profound guidance given by the Holy Messenger, peace be upon him, is a stern warning for the oppressor, and a reminder of hope for the oppressed. This is a testament of Almighty Creator stands against oppressed. It means that Allah will avenge those who are oppressed, whether they believe or not. We can see all over the world, Muslims are being butchered as a full-time job by many. Rohingya, Syria, Palestine. All over the world, we hear about it. We read about it, and many are bringing awareness to it. The Almighty Creator has promised to come to the aid of the oppressed, and He has never and will never break His promise. Similarly, in Kashmir, a land which is predominantly Muslim, overrun by state-sponsored terrorism by the Indian government, school boys and girls have been targeted with pellet guns, where their eye sockets are deformed and their once bright future now buried at the hands of murderers. The youth have been pleading for help, and the entire world is ignoring them. I, along with my colleagues and the administration of the Muslims of America, are here today to answer their call and invite you to do the same. Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce the Chief Executive of the Muslims of America, Hussein Adams.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا مولانا محمد وصحبه سيدنا مولانا محمد وبارك وسلم عليه. Good afternoon. May the peace and blessings of the Almighty Creator reach you all. As human beings, as Americans, as Muslims, as Christians, as Jews, and moral people of this earth, we all have a responsibility to take action to protect the lives of the innocent. In the beautiful mountainous valley of Kashmir lives thousands of men, women, and children whom have suffered unimaginable atrocities from a 70-year occupation by the Indian Army. The Indian occupation has inflicted torture, mass killings, rape, and suppressed their freedoms of speech, religion, and press. On April 9th, 2017, A 24-year-old Kashmiri man was tied to the front of a vehicle and driven through towns and villages. The government who sanctioned and the Indian Army who carried out this act, using this innocent life as a human shield, we all know this is a gross violation of the Geneva Convention. The people of Kashmir are living under systematic oppression, while also having their voices silenced as their occupiers attempt to make the world turn a blind eye, as the news within throughout the West continues to be suppressed. But we will not turn a blind eye, and we will not remain silent. The Muslims of the Americas Incorporated have a decade-long history of helping the Kashmiri people, dating back to the 1980s, carrying over into the 1990s. The founding ladies of the Muslims of the America formed a delegation of Kashmir to Kashmir, where they went forth, they helped the victims, they supplied rations and food and clothing and money. And this was something that was done upholding the basic fundamental tenet in Islam and the famous hadith by the Holy Last Messenger, peace and blessings be upon him, that when one part of the body is suffering, we all feel that pain. After the devastating earthquake, Pakistan, 2005, a delegation from the American Muslim Medical Relief Team, made up of TMOA doctors and nurses, traveled to that region to aid families. Here in the United States, the Muslims of America Incorporated has constantly petitioned the United Nations, held rallies and taken steps to keep the plight of Kashmir at the forefront as a tragic human rights crisis. Even with this record of assisting the people of Pakistan, our members still face unreasonable challenges in obtaining simple visas to go on report for their publication, the Islamic Post. Nevertheless, we have and we will continue to condemn this ongoing cruelty inflicted by the Indian government upon innocent human beings. And we condemn this not because the Kashmiris are Muslim, but because it is a part of our duty and responsibility that if any human being is inflicted with pain, if any human being is suffering, that you must answer that call. You must help those people. Just as the Indian government that occupies Kashmir once cried for its freedom from the British rule, so too do the Kashmiris deserve the right to self-determination. In 1947, the British ended their rule in the Indian subcontinent, divided the country into two separate homelands, India for the Hindus, Pakistan for the Muslims. The agreement was that every Muslim majority area would be given to Muslims, and likewise every Hindu majority area would be given to the Hindus. This was done, and where minority Hindus and Muslims lived, they migrated to their new homelands. The Kashmiri Muslims, they had no need to migrate, as their state was one that was Muslim majority. 90% or more of Kashmir was Muslim. The United Nations took up the question of Kashmir in 1947 with the support of the world and concluded through the UN Resolution 47 that the people of Kashmir would be given the right to self-determination by way of plebiscite, which would permit them to choose to become part of the Muslim majority Pakistan or become part of the Hindu majority India. However, we stand here today, 70 years later. 70 years later, and the United Nations has not enforced its own resolution The Kashmiris have never been given their vote. Instead, the Indian government has miserably failed in its attempt to wipe out a rich and vibrant Kashmiri culture. Their brutality has only bred a new generation. This new generation, mind you, has risen. They've risen to take on the cause, and they continue up until today to demand freedom and justice from their oppressors. They demand to be released from this tyranny, from the descendants of those who died mercilessly decades ago. This new generation of youth are fearless. They're fearless. They stand and make the demand to the entire world. They make the demand to anyone and everyone, anyone who would have a heart, that their basic human rights are not ignored. The Kashmiri struggle has now taken such a drastic and epic turn that the third and fourth generation of youth now include young schoolgirls. Young schoolgirls whose family members have been butchered, killed, raped, houses and villages wiped out and destroyed. These girls were championing their cause for freedom. The people of Kashmir have made it clear they desire to be free. A UN resolution has provided the path to freedom. The question remains, where is the United Nations? Where is the UN in enforcing the solution so desperately needed for Kashmir? The UN, unfortunately, remains silent. And we know very well the United Nations' abilities to facilitate a plebiscite in the face of opposition, as it moved in the past, very swiftly and successfully entering Indonesia, when the people's rights were denied by occupying forces. Therefore, today, once again, we hold the United Nations accountable, directly responsible for all the carnage that is being committed up until today in Kashmir. Because the UN fulfilled its commitment to peace, had they done so, these atrocities would not have occurred. This is a pure form of negligence on their part. And it is obvious that the UN's lack of response is due to some vested interests. Some vested interests in the slaughter of thousands of people in Kashmir. Otherwise, we ask the question again, why have peacekeeping troops not been dispatched? But the UN is not alone in its complicity. We also hold Pakistan responsible. The Kashmiris are very open in showing their association with Pakistan. And Pakistan has in turn said that Kashmiris are the jugular vein, quote unquote. It said they're the jugular vein of Pakistan. If this is so, why is the Pakistani government sitting idle while the Indian army is persecuting and killing those same treasured people? Why is Pakistan not intervening and saving their countrymen from the illegal occupation of India's armed forces? Just a few days ago, it was reported that Nawaz Sharif held a secret meeting with the Indian steel magnate Sajan Jindal at the Premier's private residence in Murray. While the situation in Kashmir continues to deteriorate every day, here you have the head of state having secret meetings, entertaining Indian leaders. In Holy Quran, the Almighty Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, speaks about how He sends aid to the oppressed. He is the ultimate helper of His friends and those people who work for His cause. As Muslims, we pray 5 times daily, and this provides protection for us, blessings and closeness to the one Almighty Creator through that prayer, that supplication. However, the person who stands up against oppression, the person who stands up against oppression, cruelty, and injustice. This is the greatest act of virtue that is recognized by the Almighty Creator. Knowing this, this is what motivates us to move forward in this important cause to raise awareness of the American people in the absence of the mainstream media coverage. Today, simply said, we see cooperation and collaboration from international human rights organizations, the United Nations, international Muslim organizations, as well as the enforcers of the Geneva Convention to, number one, deploy UN peacekeeping troops to Kashmir, to immediately stop the genocide and let the Kashmiris decide their future by holding a plebiscite, to demand international human rights organizations to be permitted into Kashmir. Additionally, we will approach our own government seeking support in taking an interfaith peace delegation to that region. 3, enforce and facilitate the 1947 UN resolution granting plebiscite to the citizens of Kashmir. The United Nations Resolution 47 called for drawing down of Indian troops in Kashmir and a plebiscite. We know the history, and instead of withdrawing from Kashmir, the number of Indian occupying forces has continued to increase, and the numbers have escalated to 700,000. That equates to 1 soldier for every 10 Kashmiri civilians. This is an unacceptable situation. And lastly, investigate and prosecute the Indian government for genocide. In addition, remove India as a member state of the United Nations. India has defied the Geneva Convention for decades and cannot continue to serve as a member state while it violates the Charter of the United Nations as well as international law. The Muslims of America Incorporated urgently brings this issue forward to the American people. We bring this issue forward because within this country and throughout the West and throughout the entire world, the news continues to be suppressed. The Kashmiri struggle continues to be ignored and pushed under the rug. So today, we ask you to raise your voice and your sphere of influence to amplify this message of the Kashmiri people and their struggle to all governments in all parts of the world, to all officials and all heads of state, international human rights organizations, and social media, in order to assist in bringing this justice for Kashmir. The plight of Kashmiris is not just one of the Muslims, but should be a burning, burning issue for all of humanity. Thank you, and the Almighty Creator bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.
Spoken portion is done. We'll take questions at this time. Yes, sir.
My name is Imtiaz Khan. I am from Indian occupied Kashmir. And I visited the place last year. I was there and was witness to some of these atrocities which are shown in the picture. As the brother has said, the Kashmir issue has been ignored. The question is why the world is silent to this. Can we call our senators and congressmen, meet them as a delegation and tell them, what are you doing about Kashmir?
Thank you for your statements and your comments, and we appreciate your attendance. This struggle, as was stated, is a struggle that we took on, this community has taken on from as early as the 1980s, and it is alive in our bloodstream up until today, and we will continue We will continue to amplify this voice. We are committed and have been committed and will remain committed to not only amplify this voice, but to join other organizations, as was mentioned in the speeches given, to come together, as our guest mentioned, you know, in summoning and holding these congressmen and officials, state officials, responsible in some shape or form. It's because of that suppression, because of that silence. It's because of that silence that nothing is done. There's no outcry. Where's the outcry? Where have we seen the words Kashmir on CNN, BBC, ABC, NBC, or barely any international channel mention about the plight, mention about this ongoing struggle? Now the girls, the schoolgirls are taking this, you know, to the street. And this is something that, not because they want to fight, because they're being abused, because they have family members who have died, who have been killed and butchered and raped and murdered.
The last couple of days have been for Muslims to advocate for their causes in this country. And we advocated for Kashmir. And it is our job, and this is why we're here. We are going to make our representatives uncomfortable with what's going on there by giving them a barrage of information and a barrage of questions. And the main question will be why.
My name is Aisha. I'm from New York. What type of campaigns do you plan to implement to publicize your cause through mainstream media?
Through mainstream media, at this point, we're dealing with social media. We have not conducted anything as far as mainstream media up to this point. Granted, the rallies that we had got very, very minimal coverage, as you would probably know. So we're currently working and devising ways to get the mainstream press interested in what's going on in Kashmir. And I have noticed an uptick, at least in newspaper coverage, which in turn goes to social media, just in the last couple of weeks, having to do with Kashmir. The work hasn't begun today, but I think in earnest, it's been amplified today, and we're going to continue moving forward. Thank you for that.
Additionally, we'll be sending all of the video coverage from today to all of the news outlets, starting in Pakistan, all of the newspapers, all of the media outlets throughout this country and around the world. And, you know, we plan, and Almighty plans, and He's the best of planners. He first amplifies, but in doing so, we know very well how our grassroots efforts, you know, how successful, you know, we have been in not just depending on, yes, we will pressurize the elected officials, and we will continue as was done for the last 4 days here. But in the same breath, this all starts from our, you know, efforts on the ground.
My name is Kubra. I'm 16. I live in New York. And I would like to know, as a young Muslim youth, what can I do to assist the Kashmir campaign?
Thank you for the question. You can definitely write letters to your state representatives. Mm-hmm. You can write letters to your government representatives, your congressmen and your senators. And you can also write letters to your local newspapers and any newspapers around the cities that you live near. Okay? And those letters get read by people, and that's how we bring this cause to the forefront.
Yes, my name is Aisha Mukeed. I'm a correspondent with the Islamic Post. I heard you mention several times that the Muslims of America have done things in the past. Exactly what has TMOA done to amplify and bring light to the situation of what's been going on in Kashmir?
TMOA has in the past organized and participated in many rallies right here in Washington, D.C., also in front of the United Nations in New York City. We have, appealed constantly to the United Nations, as well as from the onset, our team of nurses and doctors have visited the lands of Kashmir, bringing medical supplies and aiding the Kashmiris, in whichever way we could, providing food and medicine, and clothing, while they were, in the midst of their struggle. So this is an ongoing, plight, and we are urging today, other organizations, human rights organizations, and other groups to join us in our efforts in highlighting and bringing forward the atrocities.
We're going to send another delegation to occupied Kashmir for a fact-finding mission, and from that mission, they are going to go on traveling speaking tours throughout different states in the United States. And we're also going to launch a social media campaign for Kashmir, for justice for Kashmir. We're also going to continue with press conferences and with updates. We'd also like to start a petition to garner support for this cause. We are going to be addressing our House and state reps and also the members of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee on Kashmir directly. Like I said, we're going to annoy them to the point where they have to do something. We're going to have our some people that live in the different states write op-eds and write letters to the editor to bring attention. We are also going to file a United Nations human rights complaint, or the United States, to bring a case against India in the International Court of Justice, the ICJ. And one of the other things we also are looking at, in addition to that, is that we'd like to file a case with the International Criminal Court against India.